Just waiting to get the thumbs up from Laura that she's got the link posted here.
Okay.
All right, we are good to go.
All righty. Go ahead and call the meeting to order here. Debbie, would you like to do roll call?
Sure. Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Mr. Freeman,
Here.
Mrs. Batchelor.
Here.
All right, and we'll go ahead and do the pledge. Alan, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to being in person. I'm looking forward to being in person soon so we can all be in coordination with that.
Yeah, we don't do too well, do we?
Nah.
All right, so Eddie, you want to go back to the agenda? So for anybody looking to participate in the meeting, Eddie, do you want to run through real quick how you do that on the phone and on your computer?
Sure. So if you're on the phone, you press *9 to raise your hand if you want to be sworn in. And if you're participating by computer, on the participant panel on the bottom, you'll press raise hand and that will raise your hand. And that way you can be sworn in to speak during the public hearing.
All right, so this is a public hearing, so anybody who wants to speak during the public hearing, applicant, staff, or members of the public will need to be sworn in. So what I'd like to do now is go ahead and anybody who would like to speak, if you could please raise your hand on the participant panel if you're going to want to speak at all during this or think you may want to speak during this public hearing, and then we can go ahead. And as we've done in person, it's going to be a little different, but we'd like to go ahead and swear everybody in at the same time. So anybody who thinks they may want to speak during this hearing, if you could please go ahead and use the participant panel to raise your hand. At which time we will unmute you and we will go through the oath together.
Does that apply to people who just have a question?
I don't know. It applies to everybody. It's not going to hurt. We'll just do
Everybody.
it. And
Everybody's best.
Why don't we just deputize everybody here?
Yeah.
All right.
Nobody seems to want to.
Renee has hers.
You know,
Oh,
I've got something to say.
Oh, I was looking at the little panel looking for
He
your
was
hand.
trying to ignore you, Renee.
That's not possible.
All
I
right.
was going to say that. How do you do that?
All right. So the goal would be to get you to raise your hand. That way we know who's been sworn in and who hasn't. And so when you go to talk, I can kind of keep track of that. So Renee, you're the only one so far. If nobody else has a raised hand now, that's fine. If anybody wants to participate as we're going on, you don't have a raised hand, then we could always do the oath again or whatever. We may have people popping into the meeting late too. So we'll go ahead and do the oath. Anybody who wants to participate. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will tell the truth in these proceedings? Please reply with yes.
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 Or I do would work, I guess.
Or no?
Eddie and Renee.
The last time I said I do, it was 30 years ago, and
Now look what that got you.
All right. All
that
right.
backfired big time. Can I just?
All
I'd like to know
Not
who.
here, so I can talk like that.
There you go.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll follow kind of the sequence here that's listed under the new business. Eddie, you can go ahead and I guess start with presenting what you need to. Then the trustees will discuss some things and we'll open it to public comment. And ultimately, once public comment's complete, we'll make a motion to close the public hearing. And then any other additional discussion by the trustees, it's misworded on our thing, then we'll go ahead and participate in that after the meeting is closed. So Eddie, you want to go ahead and do your presentation?
Sure. All right, so the one item on the agenda is ZC 2020-002, which is the Emilia Neighborhood Zoning Text and Map Amendment Application. So just a brief history. In November 2019, Emilia Village voted to dissolve. In March of 2020, the Zoning Commission formally initiated application ZC 2020-002 to specifically adopt text amendments, map amendments, and the Emilia land use plan. So that officially began the formal process for the materials that you have today in front of you. In April of 2020, the Claremont County Planning Commission recommended approval of the documents that you have enclosed in the form that they were presented. And then in July of 2020, the Zoning Commission recommended approval with some modifications, some of which were clerical in nature and some of which were a little more material that we'll get into. And so as far as the specific application materials that you have in your packet, the overarching premise here is that there is a moratorium in place in Emilia so that unregulated development doesn't just run amok in Emilia. So that the moratorium was put in place to kind of put the brakes on everything until we could get regulations, the land use plan, and other documents in place, so that we could get back to baseline, so to speak. And so that's what we're doing today. And as far as what it all entails, kind of the first primary item is the Village Comprehensive Plan. Now, this is from the early 2000s, and understandably, it's actually, given when it was done, in my professional opinion, I think that it was a pretty thorough document. It's arguably probably a little bit potentially dated at this point, and we've had discussions about studying Emilia. We have a survey live right now. We're trying to get as much info as we can to kind of get back, get to the year 2020, so to speak. But nonetheless, townships are required to adopt a land use plan for zoning. So we're adopting presently the Village Comprehensive Land Use Plan, the Pierce Township zoning map, with some modifications to more than 10 parcels, the historical Emilia boundary, and I have both the zoning map and the boundary at the end here, as well as if you'd like to take a look at any of those. The Emilia neighborhood zoning regulations specifically, basically what happened was we took those regulations, staff as well as the zoning commission, and we reviewed them for a number of months. And the key to our approach was we wanted to make sure that any glaringly obvious changes that needed to be made would be made in compliance with what the land use plan had recommended. We found that a lot of times a land use plan simply just wasn't enforced in a lot of circumstances. So we looked at it and we said, okay, here's how it should, this probably should have happened 15 years ago, but we're just going to go ahead and do it now. It's an obvious thing. And the other component was we don't want to create any nonconformities, create problems that don't exist, more or less, for residents when we kind of take these Emilia regs and put them on the back end of our Pierce Township regs to kind of to mend them together. And that's what we're doing here. And so overall, we're using Pierce process and we're retaining a number of unique regulations for Emilia. Some of the Emilia regulations, for example, might be more stringent in certain circumstances. And we didn't want to, we wouldn't do something like put auto sales in a use district in Emilia if it wasn't already there, sort of thing. So we did our best to kind of mesh the two documents together. And, as far as accessory structures, we'll all go by the same regulations now. Amelia had 10-foot setbacks for accessory buildings like sheds and so forth. They're going to go with the Emilia ones now, which are 5 feet. It's a little less stringent, but as far as administration goes, it just makes a little bit more sense for everybody involved. So we can get into any of that. It's as far into the weeds as you guys want. The document that you have in front of you includes modifications and adoption of sign regulations, administrative roles. We created a conditional use permit process, which is referenced but doesn't exist. So that will help us better actually enforce a number of regulations. Definitions were updated. Landscaping and buffering guidelines will be applied in Emilia, and those are the Pierce regulations. We'll also adopt the Pierce Township site plan guidelines, which ultimately that's what we use to review site plans. And we say, okay, here is traffic over a certain threshold? Are they managing their stormwater? All those sorts of things, just making sure that there's a good solid framework for them. References to accessory uses are also going to be cross-referenced, as well as use tables. What you'll see here is the architectural design standards for non-residential buildings was actually X'd out, because what happened was during the zoning commission public hearing, the zoning commission said, we really feel like the areas outside of downtown Amelia should also, the non-commercial areas, the commercial districts, should comply with Pierce Township's architectural guidelines. Because basically before any of this was put into place, or it began getting put into place, areas outside of downtown Emilia did not have any sort of architectural guiding regulations whatsoever, just their downtown, which has its own architectural features. So the zoning commission felt strongly about applying our architectural guidelines to other areas along Emilia's corridor there. Also at the zoning commission meeting, some very minor clerical modifications were made. The word ordinance was taken out and replaced with resolution. Townships, we have resolutions, not ordinance. And headers will also be formatted to, once this is put in the document, we will make it match the Pierce Township document. We were having some technical issues with getting the headers formatted. Every time a change was made, it was completely disjointing the document. So the substance remains the same, but the header just needed to be changed. So, and I'll go really quickly through the rest of this so I don't put anyone to sleep here. So essentially moving forward here, we're asking for a motion to adopt, deny, or amend the recommendations made from the Planning Commission as well as the Zoning Commission to approve all of the foregoing documents that have been just discussed. The Zoning Commission was the only body to have made any changes. The Planning Commission recommended approval with no changes. The Zoning Commission essentially recommended the architectural changes, which I mentioned. They also recommended that the signage regulations be revisited at a later date. They determined that they're okay right now as they are, but they want them to get closer and closer as we have more time to thoroughly research that particular topic, because it can be a little bit of a hot button item. And then there were some references where we're going to be using the words historical Emilia in place of just Emilia, just to differentiate. And then the clerical items as well. So moving forward, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. I can get into any particular line items you want to discuss as well.
Thanks, Eddie.
Oh, and I will say, I should have said this at the beginning. This was properly advertised per the ORC and per our resolution as well in the Claremont Sun, just for the record.
Thanks, Eddie.
Sure.
Bonnie or Alan, do you guys have questions or?
Not really questions. I do think it's a good idea to hold on to the signage issue. until we start to kind of see where some of the planning goes. I mean, largely because I don't think in most parts, I don't think we really have dealt with real signage issues in a business district like we will be now. So I think it's wise for us to just kind of park that until it's time.
Alan, I think the only one that's ever really come up was the Perrin property, wasn't it? That he wanted a different
Yeah.
sign there, taller.
Yeah. I mean, I just, most of the signage is pretty, I mean, I guess you're looking at from about where Skyline is all the way up to where Kroger is. So it's, and then again, once again, over in the other side of town, but we just haven't really dealt with that very much. So it's kind of nice to kind of get our feel and, work with the business community and build an approach that sounds good works well for everybody. So I'm glad you did that.
To clarify that what we're talking about as far as what we're dealing with right now, amendment wise, is the historical Emilia H/A boundary. Is that correct, Eddie?
The historical Emilia boundary. So that is part of it. So what's being reviewed now is to put essentially Emilia's zoning on the books in totality, which what that includes is their land use plan, which is that kind of the bigger document that says, hey, here's more or less, here's what we want to be when we grow up sort of deal. And then Article 17 onward, which is the actual zone, like the substantive zoning stuff that's like setbacks, all that sort of thing.
Okay, but what's the geographic area that we're discussing? Where does it start?
Oh, okay. Yep. I'll get it for you.
Sorry, it'd be easier if we look at the same thing in person. That's what I'm looking at. The historic,
Yep.
Is that it? Is that what we're
That's
dealing
it. Yeah. So the historical Emilia boundary, it's mostly from an administrative perspective, a lot of references in the regs. So we make it clear that, the Emilia regulations, for example, you can't take an Emilia district and start applying it elsewhere outside of Emilia. But we wanted to go a step further, and instead of just saying Emilia, we wanted to basically take a snapshot in time of what the village was, and say, all the zoning within there, that's what we're talking about when we reference the historical Emilia. And that comes up multiple times in the regs. And again, we're going to start erasing all of that stuff incrementally to get, to just until such point, it's fully blended. But it was necessary for just administrative, for administering the regs.
Okay, but it looks to me like you're not necessarily erasing, we're integrating, right? We're taking
Exactly. I meant erasing the boundary, like the barrier, so to speak.
Oh, I got you. So it's all kind of blended. Now
Right.
I have just one other question for now. We've went ahead and created new districts then, is that correct? R1, R2, that are a blend of kind of meshing Pierce's typical process in with the old Emilia land use plan?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. The commercial districts are the ones where you'll see the real kind of substantive changes. Like their B1 and their B3 district were pretty much, there's really no big difference between them. So what we did was we said, look, we'll just consolidate them all into one and blend it with our general business. And so we're calling it the Emilia Suburban. It allows more like vehicular type of uses sort of thing. And then their Emilia neighborhood district is a lot like our neighborhood district. It's a little different. Some of the setbacks and things are a little different. But we tried to make sure that those uses were more similar than different sort of thing. And then they tend to be. But yeah, for the most part, you were exactly right. Like we are theoretically creating all these new districts and putting them on the map. Because right now, all the area that's Emilia is technically blank. There is no zoning there. And we're using the old structure to reapply it.
So when you say that they had, their business districts, they had B1 through B whatever, does this by collapsing those down, does that give us better efficiency so that, a business is a business is a business? Or how exactly does that differentiate from the old to the new?
Yeah. So from a realistically, since there wasn't really a significant difference, there's kind of a twofold change. One, when you're flipping through the document, if you're a business, you're a business owner, or you're one of us or something to that effect, you now have less material you've got to go through, for example, just to get the same answer theoretically. So we were looking at the B1 and the B3, and we're saying, I literally can't find a difference. I don't know why there's a B1 and why there's a B3. I just know that there are, and so and this really kind of meshes with what the Emilia land use plan was trying to get at. Emilia's land use plan was really trying to funnel development into the hatched downtown area. And let me see here if I can.
Can you zoom in on the map?
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's basically, I don't know if you see the blue area right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
The blue.
basically
rectangle?
that's their downtown. That's the historical downtown. And realistically, they really wanted to push funnel development into that area and kind of cut down on some of the more sprawly, auto-oriented sort of development. And the consolidation furthers that. We took some auto-oriented uses out of the downtown neighborhood district. So let me see here. One of the examples. So auto body repair, auto sales, and washing have been taken out of that downtown district. So had it been there, a lot could be redeveloped into like a car wash, but right in that downtown area. That clashed with the land use plan, and we said, we're just going to go ahead and we'll change it. We have support for it in their land use document. We'll just go ahead and get it done. Some of those uses, those are more they're promoted elsewhere within Emilia, particularly in these darker red areas that you can see here, right, in those sorts of areas.
What are the pink areas, right, that are adjacent to that red?
Let me see.
It's hard to make out when I'm looking.
Oh yeah,
at the map.
I'm sorry. This is Emilia suburban.
Okay.
This is where the more auto-oriented uses would be permitted, further out of the core there.
So this is down toward, we're basically headed out to Hamlet right through there.
Exactly. Yep.
And then when you're down here, is this where the dollar store is down in here? Well,
yes.
You can't see okay. So
Yep.
the pink is, okay, I get it.
I might be able to get a better map here so that we can zoom in a little bit better. Or not.
Hey, Eddie.
Yes.
So we're going to do a more comprehensive land use plan for the entire township at some point. And I know we're collecting feedback and data with the survey and probably through other means as well as to kind of what the residents and business owners in Emilia expect and want and would like to see in the future. So as we get all that new information and as we start to put together a more comprehensive land use plan for the entire township, how difficult is it going to be to come back and tweak or change any of the stuff that we're looking to do right now?
I don't think it'll be a problem. A lot of it just really comes down to community support and the community approach of what they're looking for. We didn't do anything drastic or out of the ordinary with this. I mean, we basically just looked at it as, the land use plan was adopted by the community once, and it's really the kind of the one guiding document we have besides just literally taking a straw poll from everybody. We know that information has probably changed to a certain extent. So from a cost benefit perspective, we looked at it and we're saying, it's best to get these regs on the books, and just like what we're doing now, we've got the survey live. Last I checked, we had 75 responses already. We started it earlier this morning. We know that, kind of the wheels are turning on the road. We got to keep going with this. We know that there's other changes that are going to come, and as far as updating these documents, it's going to be a really key part of it. But as far as how difficult, I don't think it'll be super difficult. It might be it'll be time consuming. There's no doubt about it. But
okay, why don't too, if you wouldn't mind, take this opportunity, whoever's on the meeting here now or whoever views it later on YouTube, where do you go to do the survey if anybody wants to participate in that?
Okay, yeah. So there's a number of ways to do it. If you want to do it online, what you can do is you can go to our piercetownship.org website, and on the banner top front and center of our website, there's a scroll, and one of those items is take the Emilia 2020 community survey. So you can do that online if you'd like. You can email me if you'd like, and I'd be happy to send you a link. Or if you prefer to get a hard copy or multiple hard copies, we have a table set up at the front entrance of the Emilia Library, and we also have a table set up in the breezeway at 950 Locust Corner. And there are also drop boxes in both of those locations. So you might get it from the library, and you might be driving by Town Hall, Pierce Township Administration Building. You can drop it in there. You can do whatever you want, or you can mail it to us. So it's also on Facebook.
Thanks, Eddie.
Sure.
Eddie, I'm sorry, can I ask you, how many meetings did the zoning commission have to go over all of this?
I believe it was 3. We had 3 work meetings, and then we had a public hearing.
Okay.
And one of the things, I'll be keeping a close eye on this. One of the hardest things with this sort of circumstance is not missing a process, sort of thing. That's kind of the biggest front and center sort of focus. We don't want to create problems for anybody. So that's been a big, we want to make sure that, it's easy to know what the fees are going to be, how to apply, how to get a permit, all those basic things were front and center when we were doing this, so that when someone comes forward, it's not going to be a big, fiasco for anybody.
Well, this isn't a major overhaul. I mean, as far as a resident of Emilia, Eddie, this isn't a major overhaul of what they're familiar with at this point.
No.
This is somewhat similar, and trying to make it meld with what, right now there is no zoning, and no, none of those things are in place right now. So this is taking what existed and melding it with the township version. And in some cases, I noticed that there were some definitions that the township couldn't do, and so you work through those to make those, take them from being a municipal code to a township version. So, I mean, it just didn't seem to me like we were going to see a lot of change if you're a person from Emilia.
Yeah, that's spot on. That's a really good point in the way of putting it. As far if you're in the R1 or R2 zoning district in Emilia, if you were to put an addition on your house, we didn't all of a sudden change your setbacks, for example. It's the same. It's for residential specifically. You're unaffected in any of those ways. The only thing, one of the major things that'll affect residential folks is the setbacks were actually reduced. So if you wanted to build an accessory structure on your property, it doesn't have to be 10 feet from the property line anymore. It can be 5. So that actually works in their favor. That's a Pierce regulation. So, but yeah, exactly. It shouldn't have much of an effect at all. Existing PUDs in Emilia, those regs will stay in place for those PUDs.
Mm-hmm.
Any new PUDs would use the Pierce process as well moving forward.
Eddie, the setback would work in your favor if you're the guy looking to build a shed. but work against your neighbor if you're the guy who doesn't want the shed right up against their property line. So how does that, I mean, how did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, we went back and forth with it. Basically, we try to be as diplomatic as possible, recognizing that Emilia has unique circumstances and Pierce does as well. So there was definitely give and take back and forth where Emilia has some stuff on the books that maybe Pierce might want to consider for the Pierce regulations. And then there were some things where we said, look, the Pierce regs, we have a good sample with them, and we know how people react in general in Pierce to our regs. And one of those, the 5-foot setback, we haven't had much issue. We haven't had any issue actually, at least in my tenure. We haven't had any complaints or any particular heartburn. We have had a little bit of heartburn when the larger when the setbacks are more restrictive. Some of the lots in Emilia are a little bit on the little smaller than some Pierce lots, for example. And so we've found that 10-foot setback actually kind of it's a little restrictive in some areas in Emilia. Like the Klein Station lots are under 10,000 square feet. And, so we thought that might be I hate to say more pro-development or pro-neighbor, because you're right, it could affect the neighbor conceivably as well. But we've had a good enough sampling, we think, in other areas that the 5-foot doesn't really cause too much heartburn. But we'd be up for discussion if we need to get
That's
into it.
that's what I wanted. That's good to know. I mean, if it hasn't been an issue in your tenure, but to be clear, it's been about a year, so it's not historical data wise real significant.
Yeah. That first year though, people are going to want they try and get away. They want to see how far they can push the envelope. So that's actually a really hot year. You got to be on your toes. So,
yeah, they're going to feel you out, push you as far as they can.
yeah.
So they were like, I want to do 3.5 feet, not 5. Can I do it? Can I do it?
Yeah.
Good
That's right. We just, we just got to hold the line.
Eddie, I wanted to flip that. What are you on the PDF right now? Or are you on so
I'm on the presentation. Do you want me to go to the PDF?
Well, just as a frame of reference, page 154 in the PDF, where it talks about like the specifications, for instance, for R1, for Emilia Residence 1 district, and it talks about like square footage and stuff. Isn't there somewhere in our code that kind of lays things out in a grid where it kind of compares square footage minimums and things like that across different types of zoning?
Yes.
Is that in here?
Is this the table you're referencing?
No, I'm referencing more of the specifications that are listed under essentially bullet points. And if you're on the PDF, it would be, so keep going down. Let me get to that. Keep going down. Right there. Scroll up a little. Yeah, we're, I think one more page up, it talks about the minimum, there you go, the minimum requirements as far as square footage and things like that. Single family. So we had a grid or a table, I think, for some of our other zoning zoning designations that kind of compared them to each other.
Yes. Yeah. So there was some blending that's gone in here. Emilia's. This is one of those areas where, this might be a little bit. It kind of falls into the administration area where I've seen it done both ways. Emilia was already they use this format to begin with. And what happens when they use this format is you get more of a one-stop shop sort of approach in certain ways. But this is probably one of the first items that we'll be looking at to perhaps revise and better mesh with the Pierce Town. Like if you're right, Pierce Township has it in tables, and Emilia had it laid out in this sort of format. I didn't, we're
I know what you mean. That's hard. I understand now. Cause I think I've looked at New Richmond and they have more of a one-stop shop. Whereas we have things kind of segmented. If you know what you're looking at and you're used to reading it a certain way, it might be a matter of what you're more comfortable with. But what you're saying is we'd have to integrate that with ours and kind of get on a more consistent format at some point, right?
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't, it doesn't functionally, it shouldn't functionally hurt anything, but there were certain areas where we're like, well, we got to move quickly, and I didn't want to get too tied up with the format stuff. Although it's something that we need to address. There's no doubt about it. But to this point, what we did do is we took Emilia's. So this section for Emilia used to have their accessory setbacks, for example. We took that out. And so we've referenced in Pierce's. So what they now have is you will just go straight to Pierce's, to the accessory regulations there's only one section of accessory regulations in this document, and it's just when it's combined with Pierce. So there will just be a one location to go to that. So you don't have Emilia accessory and Pierce accessory. It's just going to be all one.
Right. All right. Alan or Bonnie, do you guys have anything else?
No, Nick.
Not at this time, sir.
All right. Calling me sir. All right. So I guess at this point, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. So it's *9 if you're on your phone, and you can use the raise your hand function on the participant spot on the bar below. If you want to participate, raise your hand, *9 if you're on a phone, and we'll go ahead and take any public participation at this point. Renee.
Okay, I only had a couple questions, I guess. I know Alan mentioned signage, and I guess basically on 125 is where I'm referring, because you've got one side is Pierce, the other side is Batavia. So my question would be, are those going to be comparable to each other? As far as new businesses, how I know Batavia had mentioned they didn't want signage high, they wanted it lower. Is that something that you guys are going to talk about with Batavia, or is it just going to be one side to one side?
So that's a big item to work through. Our plan has been from the beginning to work with them and to make sure that we have similar, if not identical, regulations in place. We have shared this document with Batavia Township as well. And I believe that they are making some updates, or at least they intend on making some updates. They haven't told us exactly what it is that they're going to do at this point, but working with them to make sure that both sides of the street have a common thread is very important. And that is something that we're going to continue to work with them on.
And would that include grandfathering in anyone, let's say if that signage was lowered and, CVS has a large sign, taller, Walgreens, I noticed like the one next to Walgreens, the auto parts store is lower. Would they be grandfathered in, or would that be something that they would have to change down the road?
Yeah. So this is one of those things where we have to really sort that out and figure out how we want to do it. Pierce has a certain set of non-conforming regs for signage, and Emilia has their own. And so we didn't, we're not changing any of that right at this point. But so presently right now, they'd be able to continue there. We wouldn't, cause cause a stir or anything to that effect without having a real significant conversation about it. If the regs were to change, that could conceivably create a circumstance where it's like, you can continue with the sign, but if you want to expand it, it's got to conform to new regs.
Okay.
So most common, Eddie, would probably be a grandfathering in if you keep it and don't do anything with it. But once you change it or modify it in any way, typically then you have to conform to whatever the new regulation is. Is that what's most typical?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and signage is a real, that can get people fired up in a hurry as well. So that's why we want to be really careful about the signage. We know that it can have some big effects.
Nick, either Gail Keating has a question or there's a swarm of locusts in his place.
Her associate has it. It wasn't so much a question as yeah,
Gail?
a comment. Yeah. On the grandfathering of signs, I've seen it in several sign codes where sometimes the government doesn't want the sign to be kept there forever and ever because then they become dilapidated and the business owner wants to maintain it forever. So they don't want to put a dime into fixing it. So it kind of motivates them to turn it into junk. So what some sign codes have is a time period where a non-conforming sign can last, but then at the end of that time period, it has to be replaced with something that's conforming. It's called an amortization law. In other words, the existing sign has X number of years of amortization until it has to be replaced. And that's often a good way to incorporate a new sign code into an existing business area. It's worth thinking about.
Yeah, to that point, Emilia's current timeline for losing a non-conforming status is 6 months. So if you discontinue a use for 6 months, that's the clock for Emilia. For Pierce, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
So for the same circumstance, we give 2 years.
2 years,
Emilia had 6 months.
2 years is pretty standard. But what I'm talking about is if it's not non-conforming, but it's perfectly legal. So it becomes a legal non-conforming sign if we change our sign code. And if, for example, if we say you can't have flashing neon lights and somebody has one, it would be grandfathered. But if we have an amortization clause, they could only keep it for X number of years. And after that time, they'd have to replace it with a conforming new sign. So it strikes a balance between giving the business owner a chance to keep his or her sign and the community, which has the desire to have nice looking conforming signs on both sides of the street.
I understand, Tom. Thanks for that clarification. You don't want to incentivize people to keep a sign that's a certain height. Well, it's rusty and it's leaning, but it's tall, and I can't have a tall sign anymore. So I'm not gonna mess with it.
The other thing I had, and Alan addressed it already, was, letting people know that the stuff that was already in Emilia's is still in Emilia's. And probably if I had to guess, the biggest thing and problems that Emilia really faced was, fencing, cars parked in the yards, and trailers and boats. So I think that if you brought it down to the basics, those are the three things that we would have, or that we had issues with in the past. So if a person, I have a fence, but if I want to put up and it's breaking down, do I have to go get another permit to replace a fence that's already existing? And, because I've already got a permit once for a fence, why do I have to do it twice if I'm just, replacing it?
Yeah, so you'll probably not like the answer to this, but this full disclosure. So in Pierce, we differentiate between repair and replacement. So, if there's a couple boards on a privacy fence and someone's, it breaks or it rots or something, you can fix it. We're not going to cause a huge fiasco. We've had some circumstances where someone has a chain link fence, for example, and they want to change it out to a different type of fence. They may have had a permit in the first place, but we look at that and we say, we have to re-review it. Privacy fences sometimes can be, you can see through a chain link. You can't see through a privacy fence, for example. Those different sorts of things. We have regulations that guide those items, but that's kind of where we've drawn the line for people. But we try not to be too goofy about it.
Okay. And that, like I said, those are things that people come, to me as far as, fencing can go. It used to be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you put a fence up, it has to go to the front of your house. Can't go past the facing, of your house. But then you have corner lots and, the determination has been made by people that know, even though your mailbox and your door faces this street, we're going to tell you the front of your house is actually the side of your house, which has happened. So those are kind of things that, when you said would be taken case by case basis, I think that, and you guys are there, you're not in Loveland or somewhere where nobody comes out to check anything, that those are going to be better ways to implement, what is going to happen, which is a better thing for the residents, I believe.
All right, Renee, anything else?
Nope, that's it, hon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nick,
Yes.
same comment I made before is that when you get into the issue of storage of vehicles like RVs, campers, boats, giant trucks, when the community changes the zoning, you can also have that amortization period in that zoning change, just like you can with signs. If that's what the community wants to do, you can let people keep their RV there for X number of months or X number of years before they have to remove it. So that's proper also.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else comment-wise? Member of the participant panel, use that to raise your hand or *9 if you're on the phone. I don't see anybody else. At this point, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing unless anybody has any further comments. I'm not seeing any further comments.
In that case, I so move.
I will second.
Roll call, Debbie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Batchelor,
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
I was looking at the clock to see what time it was that we're doing it.
All right. Alan, Bonnie, you guys have additional discussion at all?
No.
Not that I'm aware of, other than I need a haircut.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, look at this. You see it?
Running your little hands through it. Yeah. Hold it
No,
up there
it's-
and I'll
it's
whack it
bothering
with
me.
scissors.
And look at this. Look at this. Gray.
Right.
Sorry, guys.
It's those teenage girls.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing COVID cuts at the Kelly house for me and Ellen. So they're
You do
just,
them out.
it's one style. What you see on me right now is what you get. There's no, oh, I want it this way, or, it's what
Do you do them out? Do you do them outside? Because I'll stop by.
I have to do mine inside because I need a mirror, but yeah, Owens gets done inside.
Could I ask a question? Could I ask a question here, Nick?
Is
He
it
wants
about
to cut his
haircuts, Tom?
Yes. Do you want me to prepare a resolution for the next trustee meeting then, incorporating these zoning changes?
Yeah, personally, I would be fine with that.
Okay. Good. I'll work with Eddie then and Loretta to make sure it's done properly.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Any other concerns? I guess we're pretty much set. We don't need any modifications or really trusting the staff on this one because it's a lot of information.
So you could
Well, we
make
could
that
always,
a formal motion then to accept the recommendations and call for the law director to draft a resolution to be considered on the August 12th meeting, right?
Yep.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I so move
Can I
what
ask,
she said.
this is a motion to have Tom prepare a resolution,
Yes.
but it's not a motion to approve, deny, or the application to adopt the village comprehensive plan.
No,
Act-
no, that
You
has
could
to be
make
done
that
by
2
resolution.
steps.
Okay,
That's a resolution.
gotcha. Okay. So who made the motion, Alan?
I did.
Okay. And Bonnie, second.
Yes,
Okay. Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Batchelor,
yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes. Okay, so I guess that's it for that, right? We made the motion to officially close the public hearing prior to deliberation, and we're good to go, right, Tom?
Right, you're good.
And so we will try, we will try and get this ready for the August 12th meeting, the
Right.
resolution.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Eddie.
All right.
Additional business?
So we're not going to approve, deny, or the modifications. We're skipping that motion.
You just did the motion to authorize me to write a resolution that approves it.
To
So
approve.
that's a motion to tell me that you want to approve it. That's what it means.
It won't formally be adopted though until the August 12th meeting. That'll be your formal vote.
Right. Right.
Okay, so this motion that's written in the agenda, I'm not using.
The motion is to draft the resolution to be considered on the next agenda that would approve.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
this motion that's on the agenda,
No, I see what you mean, Debbie. No, I don't think so. We're making a motion not to approve or deny these
not doing that.
amendments, but to simply direct Tom to draft a motion.
Resolution. Okay, so I'm not using this resolution at all. Thank you,
Nope.
Nick.
Good.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get clear.
Better to
Well,
be.
we've got Nick around.
It's wrong.
Thank God we've got Nick.
Thank goodness.
Oh, man. Okay.
You want something, Nick, watch out.
Oh, man. I know the compliment, you know, it comes with something. It's not just there.
Payback.
It's a haircut. I need a
I
haircut.
know, I was gonna say, you'll be at your house tomorrow.
Oh. Okay, do we have any other additional business?
Nothing from me.
No, Nick.
I have one other thing I did want to bring up, kind of jarred my memory. We're going through all this zoning stuff. Eddie, we had an incident recently, I would call it an incident, a scenario in which some folks at Legendary Run wanted to put on a food truck event and have food trucks come in and kind of something fun for, you know, what's going on with everything. You're kind of limited on what you can do. They had to submit for a temporary event zoning permit to do so. You've kind of been working on that. One of the folks that kind of went through, a couple of folks that went through the process, I guess, viewed as a little bit cumbersome. There's a $60 fee for the application. Can you kind of bring the other two trustees up to speed on that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, so you covered it pretty well on the, you know, there's a food truck, 2 food trucks proposed near the golf center at Legendary Run. I believe it was might have been for a day or so, and just for one night. And the process for that, the way that we process those sorts of events is a $60 permit. They fill out a zoning application, and then they can give us like a hand-drawn sort of like a Google aerial, just showing where those trucks are going to be. We take that application, we forward it to the police and fire to give them a heads up, make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then zoning also confirms what the hours are going to be, who's responsible for taking everything down and cleaning it up. as well as maintaining contacts, everything like that. And then they're good to go. That's a general process. And Trustee Kelly and I have discussed kind of figuring out ways where we can better refine that process, maybe make the application a little bit more long-term, so to speak, and also review the fees as well to see if,
i.e. for an event that's going to continue to occur. So we have the same exact event. They apply for a zoning permit for said event, and it reoccurs in a month, or it reoccurs in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and it's the same thing. We've already put in the legwork to verify setbacks and to basically confirm how the event's being held, which is what the $60 is for. But that most of that's been done. So they want to do the same event again. And Eddie and I had discussed the idea that perhaps we could make an easier process the second time around if it's going to be the same exact event. So they have like food trucks events. There's one down on Kellogg. They have, I don't know how they deal with these in other communities, but I'm thinking if it's the same exact event, I don't know if it occurs, let's just say on a weekly basis, that you need to go through this entire process each time that event occurs.
Well, it makes sense from an efficiency standpoint to find a way to keep people from having, you're discouraging people from wanting to do it if they have to go through a mountain of paperwork every time. As for the fee, in the past, I recall, and maybe Loretta can clarify my memory a little bit, but part of that $65 fee had a lot to do with more of the park. And when we had events, a lot of times John's staff would have to be there to help clean up. But in this case, I mean, there's some flexibility there if there's no cleanup by anybody else but the person putting it on. So I don't know. That may be something to look at as well.
Eddie, did you want to expand a little bit on that you had on, like, I don't know how we referred to it initially or how you referred to it, but like a fast track pass, essentially. You could have a certain time fee for an event that reoccurs. That's the same event that doesn't require a lot of staff effort on our part. It could get approval in some kind of way, and it could move through a little bit different of a process as it reoccurs.
Right. Yeah, I think based on our discussion, I think since everybody considers the TSA, for example, like just the greatest, most efficient bureaucracy ever created, we would do like a TSA pre-check sort of thing, but for temporary events, I'm half joking on that, but
I love how he says it's so deadpan that nobody picked up on it. I'm cracking up.
but to Nick's point, what we were thinking was, if you know that you're going to have this event occur each month throughout the summer, you're going to have it, every other weekend throughout the summer, and it's not going to change. There's really no point in us saying, okay, you need to fill out a new application every single time you do this, because up front you would come to us and you say, hey, I'm going to have at most 4 food trucks or tents, whatever it might be, and you pay the one fee. You get your plan set up and everything like that, and you let us know it's going to be every other weekend, July and August, and you let us know one time through, and you'd be good to go. Instead of right now, technically what the process is if you keep coming back and doing that event every other weekend, you have to go through the temporary event process each time.
But
and
Eddie,
so sorry.
Is there a limit for the number of times they could do this?
There is. I can get those. Let's see here. I can share this as well.
I mean, this wouldn't be something you would want to continue on a, all summer long, would you, on a weekly basis if it?
I don't think in this particular scenario, probably not, but it would just kind of, the concept is what we're kicking around, the idea of, a way to get a one-time permit for an event that's going to be the same, that reoccurs, to kind of lessen the financial burden and essentially not discourage neat events like this that might reoccur. Now, you might have to come back next year and, you know, get another application that might be good for a certain period of time. This is all theoretical. We're just kind of, that's why I wanted to bring you and Alan in on it. We're not obviously, you know, setting anything up. We're just kind of kicking around some ideas.
No, I know that. I'm just saying, you know, like we have a set number of yard sales you supposedly can have in a year. Would this be something, I'm just saying, would this be something you would want to happen every weekend all summer long? Or is there going to be a limit to how many anybody could have?
Yeah, so right now, our limit is basically, you know, you could have a temporary tent event for a period of 14 days, once every 90 days.
Okay.
So you would get like a 2 week, right now you get a 2 week block every 90 days.
But something like this would be, it would grant, I guess, special or unique approval for a unique event that reoccurred, you know, at a certain frequency. And obviously it would all have to be applied for and approved, and you'd have to set some criteria for these types of events. But as opposed to like a yard sale, where like, oh, you don't want to approve that and then have your neighbor yard sailing every weekend for the entire summer, that wouldn't be beneficial. But maybe folks in Legendary really like something like this. Maybe they would really enjoy having food trucks every other weekend, and you could kind of ease the process and essentially try to be sure that our processes aren't discouraging something that might be beneficial and, you know, for the community in general.
One thing to consider is to make it exempt from zoning altogether, because it's not really a festival, circus, or concert. I'm just reading the words here. It's a commercial vehicle parking on a public street, which doesn't involve zoning. And as long as the property owner approves of somebody standing in their yard and they have to clean up, you may consider just making it exempt from zoning. Something to consider.
It might make it more efficient.
Well, if it is in the right of way, that it is exempt. We don't regulate or require zoning permits for people doing things in the right of way.
Right.
That goes for that just defaults to the police and fire.
Yeah.
In the example that we're using, it was on HOA property, kind of in one of their drives, just in there. They have like a U driveway, and that's where they were setting up close to the parking lot.
Yeah.
But you know, this is the sort of thing where ultimately, you know, we don't want to regulate a community in a way that the people don't want to be governed a particular way. There's no point in governing them that way. That it kind of defeats the whole purpose of why we would, you know, why we have trustees and represent, you know, we don't want to do something where if people are cool with it and fine and they want to be able to have a food truck in their neighborhood, you know, every weekend of the summer or whatever it may be, if that's how, you know, if that's what people want, then that's something that we definitely want to facilitate. The reason that these are in place are just basically what the common issues that we get are, we're trying to protect against circumstances where people are out late at night and causing ruckus in residential areas or blocking driveways, or we don't know who's setting up what, who's leaving garbage where, all those different sorts of things. As well as, you know, the temporary nature of these events is, you know, if you're going to run a business, you know, that borders on a permanent basis, you need to go find a place to permanently do the business. And versus, you know, these are unique circumstances and a unique time that we're in, where we have a pandemic. People are eating outside. These food trucks are looking for business. We're trying to make it so that it's easier for them to do business. Our regs just don't really contemplate this sort of, you know, a unique circumstance like that. That's all.
Well, and I think getting back to the issue, the more I think of it, of exempting it from zoning or some sort of a permitting process. You know, you hit on it. It is a commercial activity, and you know, you want to make sure that, you know, these trucks or anything like that aren't just rolling up on somebody's front yard, and you know, they're setting up shop. So yeah, I mean, I think that running it through the the zoning process makes some sense to keep it in that house so we can have some approvals on it and some, time limits and regs. But yeah, I think working on it, tinkering with it, having a full policy about it, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it allows the neighborhoods to have some events that are kind of fun and different and cool. And I think that's always a good thing. And why would you, what if there's no cleanup on our part, there's no staff or very little staff requirement on our part, why would you keep charging them $65 every time they walk in the door? And filling out a 20-page document each time they try to do it. I like it. I think it's a great idea. I just like to see it more, see more language around it before we could approve it. As he scrolls through language.
Oops. That
As
was
if
completely,
As if
that was
sending
completely
me a
unintentional.
message. I see how you're doing that. I get it.
Well, yeah, I didn't anticipate getting this far into the weeds on it, but I did want to try to bring you up to speed on what Eddie and I have been discussing, so everybody's in the loop.
So Nick, you didn't think we'd get into the weeds. You bring up something where it's got like lots of words to it, and you don't think I'm getting into the weeds on it.
Well, I'm as much to blame as anybody, yeah, because I just can't help myself. But
How many years have we been on the board together, dude?
Going on 3, I guess. Long enough.
Seems a lot longer, right, Nick?
Yeah. Well, Bonnie or Debbie, you guys have anything to add, or before we move on?
Nope.
No,
All right. We have any other additional business before we entertain a motion to adjourn? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
I will second it.
Roll call.
Mrs. Batchelor,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes. All right. Thanks for everyone who attended.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.